the blame game continues between national and city officials. Commuters, of course, continue to bear the brunt of the Western Cape taxi strike. Let's bring in our reporters, Kevin Brandt, who's at a bus rank, and, of course, Ayesha Ismail, who has been tracking the political developments and the negotiations. They're both joining me now. And, Ayesha, I'd like to start with you. You heard there the Transport Minister saying essentially that the bylaws of the City of Cape Town are in contradiction of what the National Land Act lays out. But the Mayor of Cape Town having none of this.
That is indeed so, Sally. I spoke to the mayor about this, and he's adamant that the City of Cape Town is not using any bylaws to impound taxis. He says they're using the National Land Transport Act, which has been implemented since 2009. And he's saying that he's actually shocked and dismayed that the Minister of Transport is saying that taxis cannot be impounded in terms of the NLTA. He's also saying that he's not going to heed her call to release the taxis that have been impounded so far, because he says that she's not authorized to do that and he's not authorized to do that either. And if he were to release those taxis, he would be breaking the law. This is what the Mayor of Cape Town had to say earlier today.
Well, I'm afraid the Minister has not read the legislation that she is responsible for as Minister of Transport, because all of the taxis impounded in Cape Town have been impounded under the NLTA, the National Land Transport Act, an act which she is responsible for enforcing and administering and overseeing. It comes from her department. And so it really is worrying that she does not understand the action that we are taking to protect commuters and residents in our city. She is the Minister of Transport for South Africa. She should act in the interest of commuters. She is not the Minister of Taxis. The Minister of Transport should be there to protect all commuters and those using public transport around the country. So it's concerning to me that she has so energetically taken up the cause of taxi mafia in our city, who are, as we speak, still trying to perpetrate acts of violence and intimidation in our city instead of acting responsibly as public transport operators.
Now, she's asked for the taxis that have been impounded to be released with immediate effect.
The simple answer is no. That we don't have the power to. It would be extra. It would be outside of the law for us to release a vehicle that has been impounded for an offence, for a traffic offence. The Director of Public Prosecutions can do that. The taxi owners can make representation to the DPP, to the traffic court, and they can have those offences cancelled. But it's asking me to do that is asking us to disregard the law. The Minister doesn't have that power. I don't have that power. And frankly, it is surprising that a Minister of State would make such a call, or in fact a demand, that someone should ignore the law and ignore her own act.
Yeah, and of course, you know, the Minister is saying that the Act, the Land Act, National Land Act, does make provision for impounding vehicles that don't have the right permits or not on the right route. But, you know, the truth is both the bylaw and the national law speak about the ability to impound when a vehicle is unroadworthy or is on the road and going to do something potentially dangerous. That's quite broad. Perhaps the bigger issue, Ayesha, and you've watched this issue from the start, is that these are people who are supposed to be working together on behalf of government, yes, albeit from different levels of government, to manage this problem. And, you know, Jordan Hill-Lewis also in that interview saying that so far today has been fairly peaceful, and if it continues, they will then return to the negotiating table. Have you got any clarity, Ayesha, on exactly where we are with these negotiations, and if so, who's involved?
Well, so far what we know is that negotiations have taken place between the national government, provincial government, and the local government, the City of Cape Town, and of course the Taxi Association. I think, Sally, that despite the fact that these negotiations have been going on for days now. And of course, we've seen the City of Cape Town and Golden Arrow going to the Western Cape High Court to go and seek interdicts against the perpetrators of violence. On Sunday, Golden Arrow was granted an interim interdict. Last night, very late, the City of Cape Town was granted an interim interdict. And as you say, today was relatively peaceful. But still, we have not been able to get any commitment from Santaco or from the City of Cape Town or from anybody that's involved, any of the stakeholders, that they have come together and reached a peaceful and a lasting solution to the to the whole question of impounding taxis, because remember, this is how it started. It started with the City of Cape Town saying, we are going to impound your taxis. Jordan Hill-Lewis said to me earlier today that they issue 50,000 fines to taxi drivers every single month. He says that only a fraction of that is being paid every month. And so I think, and I can only, and perhaps I shouldn't speculate, but just listening to what Jordan Hill-Lewis was saying to me earlier today, he's saying that in terms of the NLTA, they are able to impound taxis. In terms of the bylaws, they're not able to do that. So I think that in order to perhaps take a harsher stance against the taxis, to make them compliant, to change their behavior, they've used the national regulation in order to get their point across. But coming back to your question, has there been a resolution? As far as I know, negotiations are still continuing.
All right, Ayesha, thank you. So, Kevin, let's bring you in here, because, of course, in the midst of all this toing and froing, stop-start negotiations, the ordinary commuter has had almost a week now of total chaos trying to get to and from work and school. What's the picture been like today? We know that the taxis are still not on the roads, but have commuters been able to get to and from work?
A very good evening to you, Sally. With a lot of struggle, some commuters have made their way to their workplaces today. There are a lot less commuters queuing at the bus stop here where I earlier also spoke to you. Today there is much less commuters here. We can also assume that this might have to do with tomorrow being a public holiday. A lot of the people that I spoke to earlier indicated that they simply stayed away from their place of work, that they informed their bosses that they are unable to come, that they do not want to risk being stuck here in the city, as scenes that we've seen play out last Thursday, where people were able to come to work, but they had difficulty in finding their way back home due to the ongoing taxi strike. We've also heard from authorities here in the Western Cape. Just earlier this afternoon, the Education Department gave us a new update saying that more than 850,000 learners, saying about 71% of the learners in the Western Cape did not attend school today. Also saying that 92 schools have had to be closed earlier due to safety concerns in their various communities. Also, the healthcare sector earlier on indicated that they too have been impacted due to healthcare workers not being able to make their way safely to and from healthcare facilities. So far-reaching impact of this taxi strike here in Cape Town. The commuters on the other end are waiting, desperately waiting for some sort of resolve between the parties as the negotiations between them are still ongoing. I'm joined now by a commuter, Trevlin Dirks, who's speaking to us with regard to his experience of public transport over the past couple of days. Can you just tell us, how did you manage to make your way to the CBD and Goodwood where you live?
I mean, good evening, viewers. It's been quite terrible, not knowing whether to come to work or not. But we love what we do at work, and we take the risk, And it's not always that one is fortunate, but I made it to work this morning. I had to get up really early and wait long hours for a bus, as many of us that are using public transport, and this is very inconveniencing. One also must avoid getting to work late, so it's been bad. It's been hard, yeah.
Trevlin, what's the word coming from your relatives? How have they been going about the city and made their way around the city over this time?
Yeah, that's true. It's been a bit challenging. I have a few relatives that are schooling, and there hasn't been public transport for them. Missing school, missing work, which ultimately results in, failure. And yeah, it's been tough also for them as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that sentiments with us. One of the commuters here, Sally, painting a picture of a very helpless situation that the commuters find themselves in, and desperately wanting the authorities to come to some sort of resolution with regard to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, and actually a question for you and Ayesha, but I'll start with you, Kevin. Is it at all clear what is going to happen? Obviously, tomorrow is a public holiday. What is going to happen on Thursday morning? We heard the mayor speaking to Ayesha saying, I'm not releasing those impounded vehicles. Any indication of what's going to happen on Thursday?
Sally, more voices have now also come to the fore. The ANC here in the Western Cape, joined by the SACP as well as COSATU, has also joined in calls for the situation to be resolved, also saying that they will be heading to court, most probably the African National Congress here in the province, and that is to challenge the use of the bylaws that the city relied on to enforce, the rule of law on the taxi operators. The ANC feels that the city is, without any right to enforce such stringent laws as they refer to them as. It's unclear, to come back to your question, as to what exactly will be playing out come Thursday morning. My understanding is that the talks between the mobility, the transport department here in the Western Cape, as well as the officials from the taxi industry, those talks are still ongoing. I've requested an interview with our officials from the mobility department, and they said that they cannot yet engage in any formal communication while the talks between these various parties are still unfolding. We do expect also then come tomorrow, it is a public holiday. A lot of people will be at home, will be within their communities. Today we've seen a lot of law enforcement as well as police officials out and about to ensure the safety of the residents and people on the roads, and we do expect the same to play out at least come tomorrow, Sally.
Yeah, absolutely. And safety is, of course, an absolute top priority. Kevin, thank you so much. But I also want to bring in you, Ayesha. Do you have any indication what on earth is going to happen on Thursday? Any word from Santaco, who seem to have been fairly quiet in the last few days? And of course, you also spoke to the police minister, who kind of seemed to endorse the hardline stance that the city of Cape Town has taken. But do you have any information about what is likely to happen on Thursday?
Well, Sally, remember when Santaco announced that they were going on strike, they did say that they would resume their services on the 10th of August. They haven't changed that stance. They also released a statement saying that they are happy that the National Transport Minister has gotten involved. They also condemned the ongoing violence, and they're calling on their members to conduct whatever protest that they're having, to do that in a peaceful manner. So just judging from what they said in their statement earlier, that they will go on strike for a couple of days, but that they will resume services on the 10th of August. Coming back to the National Police Minister, Becky Cele, he has called for everybody, and in his words, to put aside their egos and to sit around the table and find a peaceful solution.
Absolutely. Thanks very much to both of you. Much appreciated. Ayesha Ismail and Kevin Brandt, just bringing us the latest on this taxi stay away, which has been very violent. 5 people have died, and of course there have been many acts of violence and destruction, but a calmer day today, and let's hope a breakthrough on this issue. But still to